Well, welcome back to another episode of the Empowered by VICTRESS podcast. Again, I am your host today, Stacy Orsborn, and I am super excited to sit down and have an official on-the-screen conversation with Amber Leonard-Thome. Did I say it right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. We're learning. I talk with her every day, but I apparently don't say her last name all that often. Amber is our lead strategy officer here at VICTRESS Movement. She, by her own voice, is a Jill of all trades. She fills gaps. She can see big picture, but also see the little fine details that we're missing. She works with me very closely on our fitness intellectual property, and you'll understand why as she starts to explain her own background. But she also supports the executive team and has a seat on the executive team in regards to all of the processes, the procedures, and culture development of this entity that we are growing and developing to be out in the world. So I wanted to sit down and have a chat with her and let you have a voice and let you have a space in talking about all the amazing things that you are, not just what you do. So thank you for doing this today.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Amber's been homesick for the last few days, so I also appreciate you being willing to do this. I feel like it's just going around right now. So, can you share a little bit about your career experience, expertise, where you've been, where you've come from, just a little bit about your background so people get an idea of, maybe Amber up until moving to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Sure, yeah. I got my bachelor's of exercise science in undergrad. I started as an undecided major. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Interestingly enough, I thought initially I'd go into education, like elementary education, and then somehow couldn't decide as any like 18, 19-year-old, right? Like it's hard to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life and make that decision in deciding on one specific degree. And so I came in undecided. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. And I kind of fell into the exercise science program, which was really new at the time. And I landed in health and fitness education, or that was like the specialty that I went into. There were two programs. One was clinical, that was like pre-med, pre-PT, any type of preclinical type of program. But I really like working with people. I like being active. And so that was like kickstarted my path. When I was in undergrad, I worked at our university wellness center and I really enjoyed that. I did a lot of clinical exercise testing and prescription, gave some lifestyle and nutrition, just very basic advice to faculty and staff and students at the university that I went to, and fell in love with that type of role. And I thought that's what I wanted to do, was to work in university wellness. I graduated in 2009. And that was like soon after the recession. Like people didn't have a lot of disposable income to be spending on fitness and just extra stuff. And since I knew I would need a master's degree for getting into a university fitness or wellness type of position, I went right into grad school. And I got my degree in, I have a master's degree in fitness management, physical activity, fitness management, and started working as a personal trainer throughout my graduate education. And I ended up staying on and managing the gym that I worked for, which looks a lot like VICTRESS, or looked a lot like VICTRESS. We did primarily semi-private personal training. So it was just a different environment than like the University Fitness and Wellness Center, or community-based. And I think the burnout of like pursuit of education and not exactly knowing where I wanted to go, and working very much with people and pouring into their cups, I got pretty burned out and knew that I needed to change direction. I knew that managing that fitness facility was a temporary thing, and I wanted to pursue the career path that I had gotten my degree for. I actually ended up landing a position in an academic department, in a kinesiology department in my hometown. And I was an academic advisor and coordinator of intramural sports for a handful of years. And I started, I moved back into kind of the academic position, enjoyed that, but with having like a three-pronged position, it started to get to be a lot. I missed fitness and being involved with people and just being in that type of setting. And so I started doing some group fitness stuff on the side. I coached a metabolic conditioning class. And again, experienced some level of burnout, which has been a theme for me, which I'm not super proud of, but it has been really a learning experience. And I feel like I've learned so much and I'm able to apply a lot from the choices and decisions I've made and the ways that I've lived. So work-wise, again, was still missing more of the fitness stuff. And just had some work-life balance issues and decided to reach out to Girls Gone Strong and Molly Galbraith, who is the owner. She is a co-founder. Originally, they started as kind of a group of women who were advocating for strength training among women. And just to see if I could get involved. Like I was missing something related to fitness, but also that was bigger than myself. And I ended up transitioning to work with them full time. I got pregnant with my oldest and interestingly enough was working on developing their pre and postnatal fitness certification. So I worked on curriculum development for that and was able to work with some really incredible professionals in different fields. While I was pregnant, I helped to develop their GGS1 certification. So these are like the very first iterations or versions of those. Helped to modify, change, develop their coaching programs that they offered. And then I ended up coaching for their GGS coaching program most recently. So I was with them for about 8.5 years. While I was working for them, we moved to Phoenix, Arizona, so my husband could pursue an industry-based PhD. We knew that was going to be temporary. So I was full-time parenting, working part-time, doing all the things. We ended up moving here to Lincoln, Nebraska for his job again while I was pregnant with our second, and ended up kind of feeling like I was pouring again into everyone else's cup. So that work life, just life in general, got real lifey. We went through a lot. I had some postpartum mental health concerns that really were magnified by just life stress. My husband was traveling a lot for work. I had 2 young kids at home. I was trying to work, trying to do just a lot, and decided that I needed a bit of a break and just to kind of step away and take some continuing education. And that's kind of how I landed at VICTRESS in an employment type situation. I started at VICTRESS actually as a member after having my son. It was just like I had worked online for such a long time and had been parenting at home. I had been really just on my own, moving from Michigan to Arizona and then to Lincoln. I just felt really isolated, and self-care was something that was really easy to kind of push off of my plate when everyone else's demands were so like front and center. And so it was strength training and movement has always been something that I'm passionate about and is important for my mental health. And it was just like a great option for me to join VICTRESS as a member because you had childcare. It was an opportunity for me to get out of the house and be around people. And so that's kind of how I landed as a member.
Well, now I remember, I don't even remember. I think I saw you in class like a couple times. I don't know how it came across my plate that like somebody asked me like, do you think that she needs onboarding? And they said she like worked for Girls Gone Strong or like something like that. And I was like, no, who is this person? Like, who are we talking about here? Because all of our members go through an onboarding process in regards to like breath and core and teaching movement patterns and like all of those things, which it wasn't like an insult to you. It was essentially more of a, yeah, no, she probably doesn't need to know. She doesn't need to learn a whole lot from us. She knows quite a bit on her own. But yeah, and then I think you were wearing that had come across my plate as a question, and I had said, no, she doesn't need it. And then I think I was in class, or I had a PT client or something, and you were in class, and I noticed you, like, the Girls Gone Strong sweatshirt, and I just finished, or was in the process of working on my menopause, or I think at the time, or I just maybe I just finished GGS1. I think that's what it was. I was working on, or like just about to finish GGS1. And I was like, oh, I was like, I'm working on that right now. She's like, you're like, yeah, I work for them. I'm like, oh, that's you. Okay, there she is. There's the girl. So yeah, I mean, I think it was just a organic, as long as you had the capacity, and as long as that was something that you wanted to do again, to have a conversation around, having you on the floor from a coaching perspective just seemed like it made sense to me, unless you really didn't want to. So it was a conversation I feel like we had fairly quickly after you becoming a member.
Yeah, I think I started in the winter of 2023. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And by May, you're like, "What? Are you interested in coaching?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." I
do you want to do
recall
that?
not doing the onboarding. And I'm like a curious person, and this was a new setting for me, so I was interested. Like, I was like, "Oh, I want to understand how they do this from start to finish." Like, I think it's helpful to understand your philosophy and all the things, and the way that I've coached, the way that I have onboarded clients is very similar. But I was like, oh, I don't get to do onboarding. Okay, that's fine. But I was able to jump.
Well, you didn't have to. You didn't have to pay for it either, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting joining class also as like someone who is more experienced with movement. Like I remember, I think my first workout, I was lifting with Stacy, and we were squatting, and she was like, "Oh, you have really pretty squats." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. I've had lots of practice," like just, and that's all that I got to do that day, which I think it speaks to the VICTRESS experience also. Like, Milo was not having the childcare room. And so I squatted, and that was it for the day. And that was fine. And I just kept showing up, and was happy to be there. But yeah, it was great. Great experience, as a member, and just being able to show up and like not have to plan my own workouts. And to have that bit of a break of being mom and being coach and being all, the other things in my life. I just got to show up and move, and be in my body. And it was really a great experience for me.
Yeah, no, and it was like, well, we can't just like let her be in this room and like not optimize on this, because I mean, even just the way you moved in the classes, like people could see, you can just see, you can see somebody that's done it a lot. It's very easy to point out, those good movers, those experienced movers, just self-awareness, even just like the release techniques you would do on yourself and like other stuff. And it was just, the stuff that like people are like, what is she doing? Like, how does she know how to do that? And so getting you to join the team was definitely like a huge, addition in regards to the coaching on the local side. But then once we decided to go into, more of the expansion, whether that's through franchising or, now looking at more just brand awareness, corporate owned locations, you were Stassi and I's first conversation in regards to like hiring somebody on that side more in like a, full-time, if you will, position, not just because of your fitness experience, but also just your bigger context abilities and your bigger picture thinking and your background and the way that you've been in startups in the past and all of those different things was definitely like something that we really wanted to have a conversation with you about. So maybe speak to a little bit like how, when Stassi and I had that initial like conversation, like what skill set did you know that you had that you could bring to the table that made you excited about moving forward with, within this company specifically?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, like I said, I had intended to take a year off to kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. That didn't actually end up happening, which is great. And I think it was really nice to have a little bit of breathing room, and then also to have an opportunity to use skills that I feel really confident about and well developed in. I had, I have an academic background in fitness and wellness and in fitness management. So from the like being able to lean on that was really helpful in writing a lot of our manuals and the information that we are providing to anyone who is working under the VICTRESS umbrella. So I have that. I have years of coaching experience. So like the hands-on technical in the gym, a lot of that. And I also am really passionate about providing women opportunities to grow and expand. And I think movement is often a really incredible stepping stone for them to really show up in their life in a bigger way. So starting with themselves and having the opportunity to kind of cultivate a greater environment, like a bigger, broader reach, was really exciting to me. I love being a part of a team. I like working with other people and collaborating and thinking about how we can solve problems or do things better. And so the prospect of taking the concept that you had created, a women-centered strength training gym that caters to women in different life stages when physiology requires different demands or different, just a different approach to fitness, and being able to deliver that in a greater capacity was really exciting. And I like thinking about big picture stuff, and also how do we actually deliver it? So like from big picture, kind of working back, what are the steps that need to be implemented? What are the materials? What information do we need to deliver? How do we need to deliver it? And so for me, I was able to kind of come in maybe with a fresh set of eyes to kind of observe what you have done and what you've created, and then to be able to put that to words. So for our coach's manual, you've done what you've always done, right? Like you've been in the gym and you've been delivering really quality programming. You have been offering a coaching opportunity and a space for women to kind of show up as they are, and you meet them with that. So how do we describe that and be able to replicate it in other areas? And that's something that I was really excited about too.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's been hugely, hugely helpful in so many different ways. I mean, essentially, if you're listening, like you essentially just heard, like in a nutshell, Amber and I's conversation weekly, where I'm like, I think we need something like this really big up here. And then Amber is like, okay, so then we need this to get us to this. And also maybe we should think about this. And the ability to take those like bigger ideas or, that come from you too, like from that perspective of filling each other's gaps in so many ways. I know we have had the opportunity to work very closely on the fitness intellectual property from a coaching perspective on, the coach's training manual. And we've gotten incredible feedback even just today on that, document, book, whatever we want to call it, that is out in the universe now, just being very thorough and very intentional. And I think that was something that both you and I were very excited to be able to do. And so many times it was just sitting around having a conversation of like, here's all of the questions that I've been asked for the last 7 years, and how do we like answer them in the brains of coaches and train these coaches from a quality perspective. So that's just the fitness side. You also support and develop the other side of the business, from the culture development side of things, from the processes oriented standpoint, from, making sure that the team is connected and that we're feeling, this sense of community within our own roles and our own identity and our own autonomy, and feeling like we are taking care of ourselves consistently and well. You play just a huge role in all of those things. And I think for me, like the biggest thing that resonates with me too, with what you do on that side is like you talked about the burnout, like the awareness that you have experienced yourself, and making sure that our team and even me myself is not avoiding it, but we're aware of what's the limitation here and how much can we really handle, because startups are hard. Like we're all doing it and wearing so many different hats in so many different ways and so many different things, and you are able to just bring that again, speaking to your own experience in it, the knowing what our limitations are and really getting honest with ourselves, I was from a capacity standpoint. So it's been fun to like watch you flourish and like get us all back in line sometimes, a lot of times.
Thanks. I mean, I'm a systems person. I like efficiency. I like doing things in a way that allows us to do things sustainably. I don't like the crash and burn thing. Like, I'm not willing to do that anymore. I think creating a culture of, if we're specifically talking about work and culture at work, we function as kind of a corporate team. But the way in which we work is not traditionally corporate, right? So we work shorter work days. We have a lot of collaboration, we have a lot of freedom, we have a lot of flexibility. And I think that lends itself to being able to kind of juggle motherhood for a lot of us. A lot of our corporate team are moms or our parents, and we're juggling that area of life. We also want to have a meaningful career and work that we enjoy. And I also like to think about organizational management in a way that's sustainable and that we can work together collaboratively as a team, manage relationships, manage our energy levels, manage our ability to be as efficient and productive as we can. And I think the constantly like pushing, produce, like it doesn't work, right? We end up crashing and burning. And it's just a cycle that I don't think we need to continue on. So I hope that, from a business perspective, we're able to kind of model that as well, that you can have and do meaningful work. You can have whatever life outside of that you want to have, and they can work together. They can be in alignment. And I think just the way in which I think, trying to be strategic, trying to be efficient, and just focus on sustainability aids in our ability to actually get things done and do things well.
Well, and I think there's so many good takeaways from what you just said. Yes, from a business perspective, from a corporate entity functioning capability, but also from just like life in general. So listeners that are trying to navigate all of the expectations from life, all of the different roles that we have to fulfill, all of the different things that come across our plate from time to time, like all of those different things that getting really clear on whether it's what their capacity is, but really, I mean, what you're saying is like, what are our values individually? We're talking about values, yes, as like a company, and like those are parameters that we've set. The hours that we work, the thing, the culture that we're developing, those are values in a way that we can help support each other individually. But it's also important for us individually to have our own values. And how do we find those in ourselves? And how do we also help find those in the people that we serve, so that we can continue to like create alignment, and that they can continue to, prioritize their own self-care and their own boundaries and their own capabilities. What are your thoughts on like how to help someone find those things within themselves, and really start to be able to foster those in a way that can be beneficial long-term for them?
Yeah. I know. I was thinking there are lots of parallels with the burnout thing, right? And working in women's fitness, it's really easy to see women who are like really pushing to reach some type of fitness or body composition change type of goal, only to like for that to not be sustainable. And when I think about sustainable results, what in any area of life, with any type of goal that you have, your values need to be in alignment with whatever behavior changes you are making. So in the coaching that I've done, a lot of it has been behavior based. So how do you match what's important to you and your goals, and how do you create a roadmap that allows you to actually reach them and to feel successful as well. So I think value setting is super, super important. It's deep work. If you've never done it, I would say give yourself some time. I've done it at various periods of life, and it evolves and changes. And I think finding like the right words to describe what is most important from you, or most important to you, can be really helpful because it kind of provides that North Star, right? Like it allows you to know yes or no this thing in life. So pursuing this goal, pursuing this job, pursuing anything, like, is it actually in alignment? And so I think the first step is identifying what is important to you. What do you value? What are those top values for you? For me, it's like humanity and being a whole human and seeing whole humanness in other people. It's love, which is action, means I am actually doing something to care for and help people that I care about. And connecting with myself first and foremost, because a lot of us are disconnected. And that's when we see discontentment, we see challenge arise, we feel friction if we are not aligned with our values. And so connection for me is connection first with self, and then with other people. And so the more and more just life experience I think I've had, and I'm also an intentional and intuitive, and like I like thinking about feelings, and I like having deep conversations and having a deep, intimate relationship with myself so that I can know myself best. It makes me a better coach. It makes me a better parent. It makes me a better human in general. If I can operate from a place of really truly knowing who I am. And I think value setting is an important part of that. So if you've never done it, you can Google value setting exercise. It'll probably give you a list of words, and just see what resonates for you. Circle your top 10 and just see how those things feel. Now I'm able to make decisions, like big life decisions, much easier, much more efficiently, because I know what my core set of values are. So just using that corporate work example, like working some type of corporate job where I'm putting in a ton of hours, expected to not take time off, all of those things are not in alignment with what is important to me, right? It butts up against that whole humanness, right? If I'm not feeling well, I'm not going to operate and I'm not going to show up well at work. I would rather take the rest that I need now and give myself that time and space to recuperate and be able to slingshot forward when I'm getting back into work or into any other area of life. So I think if you are struggling internally with something, or a job isn't a good fit, or you've been working towards some sort of fitness goal, and it's just getting to the point where it's frustrating, or you're not enjoying it, or something like that, it's a good time to sit down with yourself and just figure out what's important to you. Because sometimes creating that sustainability that we were talking about means that you need to be taking action in alignment with what's important. So there's a lot there, but I think that's a great starting point. At least then it helps to give you that direction, or know, yes, this is a good decision for me, or it's not. It helps you make those choices.
Yeah. I think it was John Berardi, I believe, wasn't he the founder of Precision Nutrition? Is that right? Is that him? In his book, he was talking about, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no, every single time. If it's not an absolute everything in me is saying yes, then it's probably a no. And even if you don't necessarily know your values in that same way, like what we just described, that usually is a guiding force for you in that capacity. If it's not something that you are extremely excited about or feel extremely called to do, there is probably a reason why there's some hesitation involved. And then once you do know those values, it's decisions that come across your plate. Where does it fit? Where does this fit into my value across the board? For me, for example, movement of some capacity is one of my core values. It is a huge part of who I am and how I show up in the world. You could say self-care in general, but really when it comes down to it, for me, it is my moving my body. And so if there are things that get put on my schedule, or things that I need to rearrange within my day to make sure that I fit in movement, it has to happen that way. Or it's a no, something else, because that's something that I hold near and dear to my heart in a way that, like, if it's not in alignment, everything else starts to fall, or just fall differently. I don't want to say they fall apart, but they just fall into different categories or in different ways than they normally would. And I'm not near as effective. I think they said another thing to consider with values I've heard over the years was, if you feel like your life is out of whack right now and you're feeling like things are off and you can't really figure out why, and you feel like things are in disarray, going back, once you know your values, going back and like looking at your calendar as simply as that, and like highlighting, like, where are my values showing up within my calendar on a day-to-day? And if they're not, figuring out a way to make sure that they're on there consistently, because that is something that you're missing. Like, you need those things, and maybe you'll feel more in alignment when you know that those things are happening. Another one, I mean, I guess it probably is self-care in general, because it's another one for me is sleep. Like, I have to be able to sleep. And if I'm not getting sleep consistently, that's why it's a hell no to more children. Like, that is something in my life that it was not in alignment. I'm not showing up well consistently. So yeah, I think it's those being aware and giving our clients and our team permission to own those, and like support them in owning those truths and those values that they individually hold, because they're so different for each one of us. But when we are supportive of those things in each of us individually, it makes the community and it makes the group so much better and so much more effective, in my opinion. But
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, demands and expectation, life moves fast. Expectations are high of everyone, but I think of especially moms, working mothers, parents. We're doing a lot. And we have the ability to be really efficient, but it's also really important to take care of yourself, right? And I think, like I said, even self-care for me, like, I know how important movement is for me and how it makes me feel and how my brain operates when I am being active versus when I'm not. It's really easy for it to slide. And so claiming that space and time for you is really important. And I think movement is also like such a great vehicle for actually being embodied and feeling like yourself in your body. Because you don't really have a choice, right? When you are moving, you have to be present. You can't be disconnected. You have to focus on your technique, what you're doing. And so I think it gives us and gives women especially just a practice to be in your body, to sense what you are feeling, to understand, the demands that you're under, and it translates out into other areas of life. But I think, you and I both value movement. I think for those reasons, not just because it's an important act of like physical self-care, mental stuff too, right? It's actually tuning into what's happening in your body, because your body gives you lots of signals about different things, and it's important to learn how to be in touch with those.
Yeah, I say this like not really funnily, but like as a funny thing, it's just kind of true. I'm not always like super good at connecting with like sadness specifically, or like crying. Like, to cry is very, especially in the moment when I would like normally have a crying response over something sad or something that has come across, like, it is a hard emotion for me to feel like immediately, or like as a response to something. There's probably a plethora of reasons that that's the case, but it's an emotion that's hard for me to tap into, or a body response that's hard for me to tap into. But that being said, if I know that it's there and I know that it's something that I need to get out, movement is one of those things that can do that for me. Like, I know that if I go in, or if I like just start running, or if I turn on like a certain type of music and I start rowing, or I even just start doing like some burpee box jumps or something along the lines where I get my body moving, all of a sudden that emotion can start to like come out. And I will, like, I can get myself, not like I'm trying to make myself cry, but that emotion of grief comes out, and then I can feel it and I can process it and I can sweat along with my tears, and I can have like that very therapeutic like opportunity for me to like process a lot of things. And it's I don't think I'm necessarily rare in that regard, but it's also like it's a movement being so much bigger than just going in and exercising. Like this is also like your ability to connect some dots, maybe that don't normally, or that life hasn't allowed you to connect on the day to day. You know, stress responses come in and we have to kind of just like bottle them up, handle them, and move on. Whereas movement allows us to like complete that stress cycle, and we can like close that door from those external stresses coming in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think of movement, and I've referred to it often as like quite literally and physically moving energy.
Mm-hmm.
So on the physiological level, you are actually using stored resources to an
Mm-hmm.
energy to move in various ways, right? Mentally, emotionally, like we carry all of that in our physical being. And so processing sometimes requires different inputs, right? And movement has a way of literally and physically helping us move that energy and move through different or difficult types of emotion. So I think movement and exercise in general can be very therapeutic for people. The ACSM, which is American College of Sports Medicine, is where my certification is through. And I remember early on in my undergrad, the professors talking about how movement or exercise is strong medicine. And I think that's really true. Like, I've never been in a worse mood after going for a walk.
Mm-mm.
You know, like
Mm-mm.
certain types of
Mm-hmm.
activity might be more or less appropriate depending on what you're experiencing. But like, shifting. Like if you feel like you're having a hard time moving through something, movement is a great option.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the ripple effect that comes with that, right? Like movement being a small portion of self-care that we require on the day in and day out. And self-care looks different for everybody. And the prioritization of different types of that self-care ranges so deeply from, you know, like making sure that you do your sauna session all the way to like making sure that you get good sleep. Or maybe it's the tough stuff and it's following a budget, and it's you know, showing up for your doctor's appointments and going to the dentist when you don't want to, and like all of those different things. Like it can be the good things and the enjoyable things, but it's also the stuff that isn't always that fun and that we don't always enjoy too much. But when we have the opportunity to do those things, and that we consistently do those things, that ripple effect from that choice and consistently making that choice. Maybe speak a little bit to like your perspective on where that can take us individually, but also as a greater entity and as a whole community, as a world, as a women's community specifically here too.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, when I think of deep self care, as you mentioned, I think it's our ability to be present with ourselves and what we're experiencing. It also requires us to kind of pause and assess what we need in that moment. I think a lot of us operate on like our past experience and what our typical behaviors are and different patterns and things like that. Um, and so, if we are really going to care for ourselves and understand what our deep needs are, we need to give ourselves time and space to do that, and practices to help us understand or help us know how to connect the dots to fulfilling those needs. So, movement is obviously important to the both of us. And it's an easy thing to kind of talk about. But as you kind of alluded to, wellness is much bigger than just fitness. It's much bigger than just fitness, nutrition. Like there are so many other things in life that impact how well we feel in our lives, right? There's our socioeconomic kind of status or experience. There's our career. There's family and deep relationships. There are 10 dimensions of wellness. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think fitness and nutrition are like the two that people are able to like grasp, or they like feel like they're able to control, specifically women. And I think helping provide opportunities that feel enriching to them is really important. So when addressing deep self-care, like you need to understand what it is that you need first and foremost. Um, As we talked about, I think moving provides an opportunity for women to kind of drop into their bodies and to sense, or to practice doing hard things, right? Because addressing deeper needs does require energy, it requires time, and it requires resources. And that might mean paying for a gym membership, right? That might mean taking time out to get to different types of appointments. That might mean addressing different areas of your life so that you can afford to do the things that are important to you. So, understanding that you have a variety of needs is important, especially for women, because I think the expectation is like you need to be superwoman and you don't have to have needs. Like you don't get to have needs. There's not space for you to do that when you are pouring into everyone else's cup. So I think of ripple effect as starting with yourself, addressing what you need, be and operate as true to yourself as you can. And that takes internal work. You have to be ready and willing to do that and want to do it. And not everyone is there. And that's completely fine, right? Like, not everyone has the capability to do that. But if you do, and I think most people do in small ways, even, how do you start with yourself? How do you show up for yourself and what you need? I think what's unique about the Victor space is that you see women come in and they have the workout that they need, and there's space that allows them to either push really hard and just bust it, which is super fun, or to just show up as they are, to move a little bit or not, not a lot. And that's fine, right? I think it's also really interesting to, in those situations where a lot of people might pull back, or like they may not want to other people to see that they're struggling or they're having a hard day, like showing up for yourself and allowing yourself to have the experience of just like needing what you're needing, right, is really powerful, right? So other people get to see like, oh, she's not feeling so great today, or she's struggling with a certain area of life, relationship, like not sleeping, having young kids is, that's a very common thing, and it's really hard. And I think being a whole person, a whole human, and like showing up day in and day out and allowing other people to see that is really powerful. I think creating spaces where there is room for everyone, right? Like room for everyone to have their spectrum of daily experience, is really important. And it allows us to show up for ourselves, to show up for other people, to cheer other people on. I think right now it's really easy to feel isolated or divided. Just it's an election year. Messaging in general really loves to be black and white or like very polarized. And so I think it's a powerful experience to be in a room with people who may not have the same beliefs as you or may not have the same background as you, and to still show up as yourself and to cheer other people on. I firmly believe that we're better together, and that like we're more similar than we are different. And it's a powerful human experience to be doing hard things together. And I think we learn how to function as a team. We learn how to function with other people that we may not agree with. And it makes living life a little easier, and we feel more connected. Um, yeah. So I think providing opportunities for women to be in community with one another is really important. Um, like I said, I mean, social media, with the rise of that, after going through a global pandemic, like it's easy to feel isolated. It's easy to feel like you might be left behind, you're behind in some way, or like what you are doing is not good enough or not super valuable, or whatever it is. And so I think just again, showing up for yourself, showing up for your community, being willing to show up for other people, is really powerful. And hopefully with VICTRESS growing, we will be able to provide that to more people around the country.
Yeah, I mean, I say all the time, like, you never know who you're inspiring just by taking care of yourself. Like, you literally never know who has, by showing up and taking care of yourself today, you have probably inspired somebody else to do the same. Whether it's walking in the gym, whether it's, the way that you order food, the way that you buy food, the way that you, show up at your doctor's appointment, show up at your financial advisor, whatever it may be, whatever those choices are, like you never know who else around you is also being inspired by your choices, and you're not doing it for somebody else. You're hopefully you're doing it for you, which we can go down a whole nother rabbit hole on that conversation. But you are inspiring and motivating other people around you when you're doing it authentically, like you said, and just consistently showing up for yourself. And maybe now is a good time to have that conversation. I think that as women, we hear a lot within the gym space that I'm doing this for my kids, right? Like I'm coming in and I am strength training, or I'm, wanting to get healthy for my children because they're watching me at a younger age, or if they're older children, it's like, I want them to be proud of me, or I want to be around for my grandkids, or whatever it may be. And I think that there's a lot of women that really resonate with that being a motivational factor for them to, prioritize their self-care. Obviously, we're talking more about fitness here. But I guess for me personally, I kind of push back on that. And I'd love your perspective on that a little bit, just in regards to like, I think those are great reasons. I think those are fantastic reasons to show up and work out and take care of yourself and show up for yourself and prioritize your self-care. But can we get to a place where women are consistently showing up for themselves, just for me, just because I matter, because I deserve to take up that space and that time, because that's what I want to do, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I very much agree. Like, yes, me exercising has a positive effect on my ability to stay present in my experience as a parent, and to parent from a different place than if I'm not moving. But that doesn't mean that I am doing it for my kids, or at least I don't approach it that way, because I feel like I owe it to myself to feel the way that I want to feel and to show up the way that I want to in that particular relationship with my children. Not necessarily because I owe it to them, right? I mean, yes, personally, I value like being a good mom and being as intentional as I can when I'm parenting. And certainly I am not perfect by any means. I don't think any of us are. Parenting is hard. But I think women deserve time and space and their own bodies, right? The experience that they have in their own bodies for themselves. Again, we're expected to do a lot of things for other people, and that is what it is. But I think, really honing in on what you want out of an experience. What do you find pleasure and joy and fun and ease in? And doing those things just for you is really important, because you're a whole human. Like, mom is one hat that I wear, right? That is one identity that I hold. That is not, at least I don't feel like that is my entire identity and my entire reason for being here on the planet. And I think that's fine, right? Like, some people really enjoy that role, and that is the most important one for them, and that's completely fine. But for me, I just, in the number of years that I have worked with women as a coach, I think it's important that they value themselves, like that you learn that you are deserving of anything that you want to pursue or have or do, just because you are a human and you deserve to have that experience. I think a lot of women also, just speaking to feeling deserving or worthy of something, like, we constantly, the pattern that I have seen in working in fitness for a really long time is like chasing some sort of ideal body type to give them that sense of worth or value. And I think it's often, we make decisions and choices and try to do things coming from a good place, but it's also misplaced, right? Because that, again, is a source outside of ourselves. driving certain types of behaviors, right? So I think cultivating a sense of value and self-development, identity development, doing that for yourself allows you to show up completely and wholly as yourself, first and foremost. And then you're able to, um, you know, be there for other people and show up for other people, your family, your friends, loved ones, whomever, your larger community, in just a totally different way. So giving people the space, especially women, to have their own experiences, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree completely. I think those are probably the biggest two motivators of why people walk in the gym, or what we hear in regards to like why they want to strength train, or why they want to join this gym, or why they've decided to, start to prioritize their exercises. They want to look a certain way, or, I want to really do this for my kids, or set an example for my kids. Or both of those, not realizing, are very external validated reasons, versus like the internal, like, I just deserve this for me. Like, I deserve to be the best version of me. And movement is part of that journey. It's part of that experience. It is a tool in my tool belt that I can utilize that makes me a better person. And setting aside the guilt from, oh, I need this, I need to be, I feel guilty for leaving my children when I go and work out. But if I can reframe it to, oh, I'm doing this for my kids to go and work out, then for some reason, then it makes it okay for me to go ahead and take that time, right? Like, it's that they reframe, versus just like, it's okay just to take the time. It's okay. Like, the guilt might be there, and that's okay, but it's also okay to just prioritize yourself. And because we are humans and we deserve that. And it's hard for women to like, oh, like, can I actually do that? Doesn't that make me selfish? Like, how dare she like prioritize herself over her kids? How dare she feed herself over her kids, or before her kids, or, all of those things that like we've been programmed into doing. And I'm not saying that not every, like, there are plenty of women out there that like have gained this huge sense of fulfillment from that experience. And I mean, I'm a mom too. Like, I love taking care of my children and fulfilling my children. But I also don't do things for them. And I don't even do it necessarily to set an example. I would hope that they see the way that I live as a woman, and the way that, I'm raising all boys. So I would hope that they see the way that I care for myself and prioritize myself, and will at times set their needs to the side to take care of myself so that I can help with their needs. I hope that someday in the future, when they are choosing partners for themselves, that this is just part of it's something that they expect, and nor do they feel like that this is anything different for them. I don't want them to choose to feel like they are expecting something from their partners at all points, and having their partners set themselves aside consistently. So I guess in that way, I feel like maybe I'm trying to set an example, but really, truly, I'm just trying to take care of me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an important distinction, right? Like, yes, we absolutely want to model things for our children that we feel are important to us. But like, I don't know, I haven't heard much about dad guilt.
No.
So
Nope.
the expectation and understanding what that expectation is different. So I think it is powerful. What you're speaking to is modeling, I am taking care of myself because I want to feel and operate in a certain way in my life, right? And that's where it starts. And yes, parenting requires you to set some of your own needs aside, or to rearrange or reprioritize. Like, that's just having kids, and caring for them and being in that type of relationship. But the expectation is different, right? So you're doing it because you need to care for yourself. And this is what it looks like for me. And so I think you serve as a powerful model for your sons, to show them that it's normal and perfectly fine and important for mom to prioritize herself. and for her to take care of her needs. Again, it's that like ripple effect thing, right? Like you're showing them that you are important to you and that you get to take care of yourself. And they probably know that you show up in a different way.
Oh yeah.
So taking that, like it's not necessarily the intention that you are trying to teach them a lesson, right? It's that you are showing up for yourself in ways that are important, and hopefully they will learn from that and set expectations in relationships with others that they have seen developed in a really healthy way, hopefully, but like we talked about, it's the internal versus the external. Where are you gaining your sense of value? Where are you gaining your sense of self-worth, right? And so I think placing it inside yourself, right? That's an inside job. That's inside work. And it's not necessarily easy. But like I deserve time and space to myself. And that can be a difficult thing to work through, I think, for moms and for people who are caretakers in general, just because they value that identity of caretaker, right? They want to be able to do that, but it doesn't mean that you do that at all costs, right? Like it doesn't mean that you pour into everyone else until like you're not doing well, or you are resentful because you don't have the time, you're not taking care of yourself as well as you want to be, right? So it's that like reprioritization, I think, of putting yourself on your priority list, just because you deserve your own time and space and care.
Yeah. And then speaking to the other external, I would say, motivation of women walking in the gym, specifically to the aesthetic based goals. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having, everybody has their own, whether it's an external image that they feel like they have in their head, or they just want their pants to fit better, or they want to feel stronger, or they want more muscle definition, or, body recomposition. Everybody can I think that it's hard to like disconnect from that like aesthetic based goal completely. Because I think as humans, like we just have learned how to like, we are visual creatures. If we see things, we experience things like, and I think that the things that we're fed is an interesting, scenario, right? Like the way the thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, we receive a lot of messaging from a very early age about what is acceptable or what is not, or what is this ideal body type. And it's especially true with women and girls.
Yes.
I remember at a fitness event that GGS put on a number of years, probably 10 years ago, Molly had done this exercise, or like started a conversation with Googling fit woman. There is, if you do this still, you will get a very specific body type that shows up in all of the images. You will likely see some sort of transformation photo. You will likely see a lot of very thin, lightly muscled, very lean, often very white, though now, like I just did this not too long ago. But 10 years ago, it was mostly white women, right? Now we're seeing a bit more diversity in kind of the fitness space. But if you Google fit woman image, you are going to see a lot of women who look like you and me. And I want to just acknowledge that there's some privilege in that, right? Like you and I can walk into any store and buy clothing off the rack because we know that our size will be there.
I will say though, if you carry muscle mass on your legs, it is not that easy to walk in and buy a pair of jeans.
We're leaving the jeans
that
conversation. We're leaving the jeans conversation aside, right? But like generally,
beyond that, 100% agree. Yes,
you'll be able to put clothing on your body. It may not fit the way that you want it to,
right?
But like
Absolutely.
You can buy sizes off of the rack. And it's not a mistake that this ideal body type has been sold to us, right? And I think being in fitness for as long as I have, it's been 16 years, maybe longer. I can't remember at this point, but somewhere around there. Like fat loss and chasing this ideal body type has been the main message that women have received, as this is the appropriate way or appropriate reason for you to exercise, or like the primary goal. which is not, it's not every woman's goal to lose body fat, to, like, I don't know. It's just, again, it's like an unsustainable thing where women are exercising, continuously doing more, eating less, trying to be less, that I find incredibly frustrating.
Yes.
And so I think, like, our ability to really focus on movement in the gym and not placing that focus outside of ourselves on some unrealistic ideal allows women to move in a sustainable way that helps them feel good. So I just, like, fat loss is not the only goal, and that shouldn't necessarily be the only pursuit that women have. And I think it's exhausting because it's often unsustainable. Women continuously are trying to, like, do the next thing in order to get smaller, and that's not appropriate for everyone, nor is it a sustainable thing, right? Like, you see the dieting roller coaster where people will lose weight and then they gain it back because what they were doing wasn't fitting in. It was not in alignment with their values. It wasn't in alignment with what's probably healthy for them. So I think that aspect of fitness has been really frustrating, and is important and shapes how I coach in the gym. And I think how VICTRESS approaches movement, for sure. I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, it's true. Yeah, you did. I mean, again, we take a performance-based approach, right? Like, within our training, within the way that I coach, the one that you coach, the way that the programming is written, the way that we describe, how to get you from point A to point B is, how do we just make you stronger? How do we make you move better? How do we make you move faster? How do we make you more efficient and more effective in your movement patterns? And if the aesthetic changes are a byproduct of that, then great. That's might be something that you're excited about. It might not be something you're excited about. It's just us. Let's focus on, like, moving well and moving better and trying to be a better version of ourselves within the gym from a performance standpoint. It also requires us to recover. It also requires us to self-care. It also requires us to mitigate some of the stressors, the external stressors, sleep, like, all of those different things have to play into you being able to perform better, which, if you can perform better, then there might be some aesthetic changes. But to sit here and say that everybody's going to look like somebody like you and I, or, anybody on the spectrum, like, that's never going to happen, number one. And number two, like, we don't want that to happen, because you want to be the best version of you, and whatever that is for you is so unique in comparison to what it might be for me. Like, it's different. And I mean, over the years, I've had people reach out, even just from a personal training perspective, like, I want to work with you because I want to look like you. Well, that doesn't work. there are a lot
who said, like, they don't want to be as muscular as me, right? And in the coaching, it's like, well, okay, well, you have all this to have your own goals, right? Like, I don't take personal offense to that. That's fine.
Yeah, that's okay. Like, you can, the byproduct of moving well doesn't always translate into, who your value as the way that you look. And I think we have really tried to embrace more of a performance-based mindset. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a certain level of aesthetic desires for yourself, but you have to be very realistic in regards to what that is and what that means and where it's coming from. Like, where is this actually coming from? Like, is it coming from the world around you and what you think you're supposed to look like? Or is this like, okay, like, I used to own those jeans and I'd like to wear that jean again because I liked the way that I looked. I liked the way that I felt. Is it realistic for me to actually, like, get my body in a way that, like, I might feel good in those jeans again? Maybe, maybe not. But it's not my value lies on those jeans. It isn't, that's not what we're saying. It's not I have reached the epitome and now I'm officially there. It's just a simple fact that, like, it's okay for you to have those types of goals, but you have to find that balance and find the intention behind it. And like you said, there's so much of eat less, move more, eat less, move more. There's a lot of other factors, in regards to women, weight loss specific, that are influencing so many different things in regards to fluctuations and fat distribution and the ability for us to put on body fat, take off body fat, like all of those different things. We are not just these simple creatures. And it's very hard for us to just like put us on a box and say like, this is a fit woman all the time, because she changes. How she looks changes day to day, let alone like year to year, month to month, after baby, postpartum, like pregnancy, like all of those different things.
Yeah, I think fitness doesn't have one look,
No.
right? Like we just saw this with the Olympics, and what I loved about this Olympics and Paralympics is that you see body diversity, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the different types of events and the body types of people who are performing those things are very different. There's a wide spectrum. And
Mm-hmm.
so the ideal, like, I think, of course, you want to feel good in your body. And often when people are pursuing aesthetic types of goals, they assume they're going to feel a certain way when they reach that aesthetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of trying to focus on how will they create that feeling now
Mm-hmm.
so that they set themselves up to um, like have sustainable behaviors, have sustainable approach to exercise, have a sustainable approach to nutrition. And like you said, the byproduct of moving in specific ways and eating in specific ways often creates body composition change, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all goal, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so in coaching, I think often I like to focus on how do we create that outcome, the feeling that that outcome would produce. How do we create that in your life now? Because that will actually help you move toward your goal or the result that you're looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there are a variety of ways you can go about that too. And
Yeah.
goal setting and exercise for women and all of that. Just it doesn't have to look the same from one person to another.
And I think we also, just to note, like, I think we are a value that, or a society that values hard work on a level that is, number one, unsustainable to maintain from a healthy perspective, I feel like. But, hard work pays off. Like, you just got to hustle, like, you work, 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 work. And muscle mass, I think, correlates to hard work. Like if somebody has a certain amount of muscle mass on their body, or they have that like strength training, I think that there's people that don't realize the amount of time, dedication, energy, all the different things, like the consistency in your recovery that putting on muscle mass does like require, right? And so we celebrate these people for um putting on pedestal of like, oh, like that they look a certain way, so they must be a certain way, which just isn't the case all the time. But I would argue, like, in regards to women being concerned about putting on muscle mass or putting on size, or worried about this or that when it comes to like strength training or exercise or anything like that, like the amount of time and energy and space and consistency that it takes to really put on muscle mass is so
It's a
vast,
lot.
and it's a lot.
Yeah,
Like it
it's a
takes
lot.
a lot of long hard work to be in a position where you carry a decent amount of muscle mass, especially as a woman, and depending on your metabolism, it could take even longer. Some of us might just like pop on right away, but it's a process, and so you have to fall in love with the process, and you have to fall in love with the experience and enjoy who you are becoming and who you are today as an individual. And if the byproduct of those experiences come with an aesthetic change like muscle mass, then that's great. But that doesn't mean that you're less of a hard worker or less of a dedicated individual or less of anything, because I know plenty of people that live in bigger bodies that are the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. And yet we label them as lazy because they carry excess body fat or whatever it may be. Or maybe they don't, and they're just like have a large amount of body tissue mass on them. So it's reframing, like understanding, like physiologically, like that's just not how the body works. Like it's not just that simple of like black and white judgments.
Yeah. Well, and I think the key word is judgment, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you just mentioned some people who do live in larger bodies and carry more body fat. They also can be well muscled and be very healthy. So again,
Very.
like fitness does not have one look. There is not only one singular goal for women. But I think unlearning some of that messaging is really important, especially if you want to feel more freedom with food, with movement, with
Mhm.
all of those things, right? If you want to feel better about yourself in general and your approach to exercise, I think paying attention to some of those biases that you have, um, the judgments that you have about people who live in bigger bodies, right? Like deconstructing some of that and understanding how that affects you can be a really important part of healing body image issues or moving forward to create goals for yourself that you actually want to achieve and that are meaningful instead of chasing like the aesthetic type stuff. And again, like you said, there's a full range. Like if you have an aesthetic goal, like that's amazing. And if you want to
Mhm.
put energy and time and resources towards that, that's your MO, right? Like
Mhm.
you get to do that for yourself. That's completely fine.
But I would
And I,
argue you get there faster when you fall in love with the process, if that
yes,
makes sense.
100% agree.
Like
100%.
you're gonna reach that aesthetic goal faster when you stop chasing the aesthetic goal and you start to fall in love with the process
Yes.
and just enjoy what you're doing and you're getting better every day, right? But
Mm-hmm.
just like consistently showing up and being authentic with yourself in that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Being
Yeah.
present in the process. I think that's a great place where to talk about growth mindset, right? Like
Yeah.
experimenting, allowing yourself to be a beginner, focusing on the process and the behaviors and choices that you're making, like on the short term, will help you reach your longer term goals.
Hmm.
With more ease and more fun, probably, if you give yourself the opportunity to play instead of like white knuckling and really trying to be rigid and controlling. Give yourself the opportunity to have a different type of experience. And I think approaching movement in that way is sometimes new for women if they have been in that like restrictive, eat less, move more type of mentality, and getting them to shift into like celebrating their little wins and doing the little things consistently. It creates a higher sense of achievement and success because we all know people who have set some type of goal. I mean, aesthetic ones, weight loss, things like that are really easy to lean on because we see this happen. I'm sure you've seen it as a coach, but like people will reach their goal and still not feel satisfied or successful. And so if we're always missing the mark, it makes us feel like something is wrong with us, right? If we're not enjoying the process, if we are not evaluating whether or not this makes sense for us, we're never going to feel successful. And I think that
Yes.
is what people really want. And so shifting your perspective and the way that you think about goal achievement can be a huge piece of the puzzle.
Oh yeah. Yes, 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 yes. So much yes to that. We could go round and round and round, let's be honest. But in closing, final question here. What are you most passionate about when it comes to the future of fitness? Or, specifically fitness for women? Like what is the one area that you feel like super excited that you see coming down the pipe or just like for the future of women's health and fitness in a broader spectrum? Um, and how you see yourself trying to add value to that.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think I'm loving that women are taking up more space. They
Mhm.
are like, we're seeing women in bigger bodies. We are seeing women eat and fuel for performance in life in general, and in the gym. I love like to see women feel and operate wholly as themselves. And I think we're getting there. And we're seeing women celebrate themselves and like be just more. We're asking for more in terms of our healthcare. We are asking for more in terms of like other areas of life. We're saying that we have needs and we're addressing them. Um, I don't know. Like I think just in general, I love seeing women be strong in different ways and just show up for themselves. And I think strength training is growing. I mean, it's been growing for a while, but I think we're just going to see more and more. We're going to see, I hope, more research in women's specific strength training, especially related to different phases of life. I mean, we know the value of strength training for the menopause population, for pre and postnatal, for women in general. But I think we will see more evidence showing that it is really important for us and that it's important to prioritize these things for long-term health. But I just love that movement in general and strength training especially are such great vehicles for women to practice being more, being strong, doing challenging things, showing up for themselves, giving themselves time and space and care in ways that they need. So I'm excited about all of those things. I think with VICTRESS and opening more locations, I'm hopeful that we will be able to have more of a ripple effect and that we'll be able to reach more women so that they get to have these types of experiences and experience what being in community with other strong women is like. I mean, I'm still sometimes caught off guard when I hear people cheering for me in class. It's not something that I think I don't know if I'll ever get used to it because I'm not used to one, and I don't know how common it is outside of VICTRESS. I think it's becoming more common, but like cheering for other women, just in general, using your voice and gaining practice with that, like physically, like just being loud, taking up space. So I'm excited for women to use strength training to become more of themselves. And hopefully it will help them feel better, feel more embodied, and just live bigger, fuller lives. Because I think when they get caught up in expectations outside of themselves, it's really easy for them to, I don't know, like not feel the sense of accomplishment or connection or success. And so I want more of that, right? Like we want to see women winning.
Yep.
Women
Yep.
winning.
Women winning.
Women winning. Yes, we've been talking for a while now. So
no, I totally agree. I said before, like, I think when you teach a woman what she's physically capable of, all of a sudden things start to shift.
Yeah, there are more
just
possibilities.
That simple. Yep, there's more possibilities. Doors start to look different. Challenges look different. Opportunities look different. Everything starts to shift when, like, you realize what you're physically capable of doing. And for me personally, that happened during childbirth. That was like the first time that I like really physically felt like something completely shifted in me. But what the beauty of gym is, you can also have that experience within the gym. Like it was, when you are able to deadlift 250 pounds for the first time in your life, you're like, okay, well, if I can do that, this doesn't seem like all that big of an issue. Like, look out, world, here I come, and it's a powerful transformation. And we see it happen in the gym all the time, every day, things shifting and changing. And yeah, hopefully we both are along for the ride to see this thing continue to have that ripple effect. I know we definitely couldn't do without you. That's for darn sure. So I appreciate you on many different levels always, but specifically today, spending time more formally, I guess, having a conversation that you and I have probably sat here and had many times just sitting here in our office. So thank you for that. And thank you for your time. And thank you for what you're doing for VICTRESS, but also just the world in general. You are someone to be admired and someone to definitely watch as this continues to grow. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is really fun.
Yes. And feel better.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Bye-bye.